Hey, what's happening? Happy New Year. It's 2026 and we're back here at Redbeard Videos. And well, I know 2025 was more or less a trash year for most people. And I can identify as someone who has had a myriad of health issues and personal issues, and the world is like our country is descending into the seventh circle of hell. It hasn't been great. 2025 hasn't been great. And honestly, the music of 2025 kind of reflected that, but more in an uneven way. Whereas 2025 was just mostly bad, personally, for most people on one level or another, music, I don't know, the underground, I feel like had a really good year. Pop music, I don't know, had a very uneven year. It felt like it was a lot of rinse and repeat. Now, I'm not a pop expert, so I'm not going to stand by that so much. All I know is that from an outsider, someone who doesn't really lean on pop music all that much, it seemed like anytime someone went outside the box that they were supposed to fit in, it was not received very well. But outside of that, I can see that rock, metal, and even like other forms of underground music really put out a lot of creativity and a lot of fun music this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count down my top 10 favorite albums of 2025, just to kind of put a nice little bow on this tumultuous year that was 2025.
He's putting on a drum show.
I've been a fan of 21 Pilots for the better part of 10 years now, and I can honestly say, I think overall they're one of my favorites of like my new finds of the last 10, 15 years, right? So I've come to know the good and the bad and the ups and the downs for 21 Pilots. And a solid or an even great 21 Pilots release usually accomplishes several different things that was sadly absent from this latest release, Breach, serving as the end of the Trench Dima saga that has been building now over several albums. The whole saga turns out to feel like a really awesome movie with a mid-ending. Not really a bad album by any stretch, but this was one that, like, when comparing them to themselves, I don't know, it feels a little mailed in. Like they were just going through the motions. The tour, on the other hand, completely different story. One of the best shows I've ever seen. I didn't get a chance to see this one live and in person, but even watching it on video, it was primo. But unfortunately, we're not ranking tours, we're ranking albums. Now, following up Clancy, which was a really great album that they released in 2024, I have to say, I for one was shocked by the release of another 21 Pilots album so quickly. I mean, I think it was about 18 months after Clancy was released, we had a brand new album, which is unheard of for even underground artists, let alone a popular one like 21 Pilots. Usually a group like 21 Pilots would go, I don't know, 3 or 4 years between releases. So it was a pleasant surprise at the time. But upon hearing it, maybe that's what the problem was. Maybe they didn't let it marinate enough. Maybe they didn't dwell on it as much as they wanted to. But I don't know. I get a sense that they're going to be going on a quite lengthy hiatus going forward, and maybe they just wanted to bring this story, this concept thing to an end. I can understand how that goes. Coheed and Cambria did this once already where they kind of bookended a saga. I mean, I understand that, and we're going to talk more about Coheed and Cambria soon. No spoilers, but we will be. But the new run of albums is a whole new story, but it's set in the same universe. So we've seen this before, and usually the last album of this type of thing, it tends to be disappointing on some level. Now, with all that being said, I really enjoyed large portions of this record, so it wasn't so bad that I could keep it out of my top 10. But normally a 21 Pilots record would be way higher on my list. So that just goes to show what the quality is. If you're not like a diehard or someone who is really exposed to a lot of 21 Pilots and this was your first album hearing them, you probably would enjoy it more than I did. As far as songs go, Drum Show, City Walls, and The Contract, which were the released singles, were definitely the bright spots on the record for me personally. Another year and another Styx tour. Of course, that's the standard. But another album? Look, I say that not because they haven't been active making new albums. This would be their third in the last 10 years, which again looking back on what we said during 21 Pilots, that's kind of par for the course, one album every 3 years, right? But I'm expecting any day now to hear that this band is retiring in general, let alone from like the ranks of creating new albums. This band seems to want to tour more than make new albums, although like I said, 3 albums in 10 years, that's kind of like regular band stuff. But they did go 17 years between albums before 2015's The Mission. These guys are all like in their early to mid 70s for the most part, like the main thrust of the band. So it's not unexpected, and it's not a criticism of the artist at all. With that, this album is yet another solid effort from this legendary band. Now, I will say as a caveat, I recognize that every album has gotten a little less amazing as we go along. But when you're comparing Styx's last efforts to 2015's The Mission, I don't see any more of that popping out of these guys anytime soon. I might be wrong, and I hope they keep trying. However, that doesn't make this album not worth listening to. It simply makes it my number 9 album of the year instead of a top 3 record similar to 21 Pilots. Because Styx is one of my all-time favorite bands. Like, when we're talking about top 10 all-time favorite bands, Styx is definitely towards the top of that. This record does offer some really good things, though, like solid lyricism on the challenges of AI, like on the world, not just on art or on the internet, but just the world at large. Predictably, a phenomenal performance by Tommy Shaw, as always, and an inspiring and brave performance by OG founding member James J.Y. Young. Why brave and inspiring? Well, you take a 76-year-old man who's a rock star and has been for the better part of 50 years, right? And he looks at himself and he delivers a performance where he has completely remade his vocal identity. Because if there's one thing that I will say, and you can watch, I posted a video over the summer of me listening through this record. You can go to my Patreon page and check that out, or there are highlights of it on the YouTube channel right here. But he remakes his vocal identity. He's always been like the high, I don't want to say screechy as a negative, but that's the best word I can come up with. It's a high-pitched, very recognizable vocal tone in the harmonies and in his solo vocal performances throughout the years, similar to something that you would put on like Van Halen as a core part of their sound. Was Michael Anthony's high-pitched harmonies was an important part of the Van Halen sound. Same thing here with James J.Y. Young, is that his high-pitched harmonies were very important to the sound of Styx, and it's just not present on this record. However, he does give a performance on one song. He has one little solo track on one of the songs where he comes out swinging his dick almost, like he's this suave, low-voiced guy, and I'm all here for it. Because I'm going to be honest and tell you that with older artists over the last 2 to 5 years, the topic du jour has been, what the fuck is wrong with this guy's voice and why does he sound like shit all the time? It's because these guys are not adapting and they don't know how to, or they just don't have the ability to check the ego. To me, this was a brave and inspiring performance because James Young said, okay, I can't do that anymore, so I'm going to do this instead. Good job, James Young. Another artist that's worth noting that will show up in my honorable mentions will be the newest Cheap Trick album. Robin Zander also does the same type of thing. He doesn't really change his vocal identity. They did it where he just threw it all out there, warts and all, and it sounds great. Like, it sounds very raw and very real, and there aren't any really terrible passages, nothing that makes me cringe all that much. It's just an effort to be as real as possible, understand your limitations, and don't hide anything. Or you can do the opposite. If you want to try and have the most polished performance you possibly can on an album, and then go out there live and either support yourself with some backing tracks, hire some backup singers, or just throw it out there and say, hey, listen, this was perfectly performed in studio. It's not going to sound like that live. Stop going out there and pretending that everything is just fine, James Labrie. Oh shit, did I say that out loud? Anyway, overall, Circling from Above is a great Styx record. It definitely ranks in the it's a middling Styx record when it's all said and done, but it's still very listenable, very enjoyable. And my fave picks on this album are Build and Destroy, The Things That You Said, and Michigan.
You all deserve each other.
A band that is ascending very quickly, and I'm so here for it. Spiritbox continues to improve upon the formula of Courtney LaPlante is simply quite possibly the most interesting and diverse vocalist in the metal game right now. So let's just keep showcasing that, shall we? One criticism of the record that could be made is that it's not terribly diverse musically, but to be fair, it's only their second album, and that's what's working for them. Look, if you're going to do something, you might as well be the best at it. And Spiritbox certainly shows on Tsunami Sea that their name belongs in that very conversation. If you want to hear some diversity from this band, though, I can point you in the right direction. Go to their EP before all the albums came out, and it's just fantastic. It's very diverse. It's very different than what you're hearing from them now. It's got more of a prog sense to it. And it gives me a sense of when the melding of all these things come together, that's what they're going to be. Or at least that's what I'm hoping for. I hope they don't fall into a rut where they're just going to keep pounding out the same thing as long as it keeps being popular. That's how bands fade away and don't have very long careers. The one constant with Spiritbox, though, is no matter how heavy the breakdown is and how brutal the screams might be, they always do it with a sense of beauty. Spiritbox makes some of the most beautiful, brutal music I've ever heard. Strong melodies, dancing through a sonic assault of heavy guitars and thunderous drums. Tsunami Sea is what metal largely is today. But here, it's executed to near perfection. No Loss, No Love, Keep Sweet, and Black Rainbow are the songs that I most return to this year.
Some things are the blessings I promise, the wrath yet to come.
Texas-based Gore hit my ears by complete accident this year, and what a happy accident it was. That is, of course, if you consider wholly depressing lyrics and angsty yet brutal metal as happy, that is. Gore's a female-fronted metalcore band, I guess. Look, I don't do the subgenre nonsense, and we're going to hear more about that later on, and maybe I'll do a vid on that subject completely later on this year, because it's often impossible to slap a catch-all label on an artist. Now, that's not very hard when it comes to Gore, but I'm not sure I'd label it metalcore, though. Alt metal, maybe? Progressive for sure. I don't know. What I do know for sure is that if you're into Sleep Token, or simply a fan of gorgeous ethereal melodies coming from an angelic sounding vocalist who aches out wanting lyrics with angst, pain, and love, only to drop you into a brutal landscape of bombastic guitars, drums, and that very same angelic voice that has now turned into a chorus of something equal to what I'd imagine a chorus of demons would sound like. I've only heard this feat accomplished better by Poppy.
Hi, it's me, Poppy.
Beautiful, effective, and something I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more of. Now, this is a 4-song EP, so I'm gonna highly recommend every single song on this album.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
Boom, shaka laka, I'm jamming without a problem. I'm locked in like the head of a roster. Okay, my check need more commas. My balance need more zeros. My flow hot like 97 morning show with Ebro.
Now, I'm going to be straight and tell you that I don't really know what makes a great hip-hop record and what doesn't, so I can't go into any measure of, like, technical aspect of this art form whatsoever. What I do know is lyrics and flow are important to me, and Norman San has this in spades.
Aha, I just wanna ball like a combine, baby, I'm bad. Catch me outside, even give these hands like Mike Ty. How about that? Everything cool in hindsight. When it's right in front of them, they sleep like nighttime. When it's my stock, better be like a bull.
My love for hip-hop grows more and more every year, and artists like San are the reason for that. Fun but insightful, cutting but inspirational, and music that you can just simply bounce to. It's just fun. Now, it was the music that hit me first, but when it comes to Norman San, I have to say what solidified my love for this artist is his TikTok, honestly. He does these regular lives where he's actually recording the music and laying down tracks while he's on TikTok, responding to comments, taking suggestions and reworking them into his lyrics. And I don't know, there's just something about being able to respond to an artist in real time as they're doing their thing and watching it happen. And then all of a sudden, like, the album drops and you go, I remember when he recorded this. That's like super cool. And I don't know, it's an insight into what goes into the studio work of a band that you don't often get to see unless you yourself are some measure of a recording artist or a producer or a manager or something like that. It's something fans don't often experience. My top 3 tracks on this album are Let It Begin, Kano, and Numb. So go check it out. One of my very first reviews on this channel were the Deftones' last album, Ohms. Is the Deftones' newest release, Ohms. It was at that time that I decided that being a music critic was really not my bag. But that album, and now this one, Private Music, is very much my bag. In fact, I do like this one slightly better than the last. The return to prominence for this very influential band was so welcome, they lost me for a few albums there. Like, there was a few albums before Ohms that I just stopped listening to the Deftones on a regular basis. So Ohms brought me back, and Private Music has now completely solidified my love for this band, so much so that I may go back and re-listen to those albums that didn't appeal to me so much in the hopes that they will appeal to me today. So this album is completely wonderful overall, although I do have a mild criticism, which would be simply the pacing. The back end of the album tends to lag a bit, and it's not that they're bad songs, it's just, I don't know, the flow of it just seems a little bit slow at times. With that, it's a minor criticism, but there's not a bad song to be found on this record. And a special note for we were talking about vocalists earlier. How fucking good is Chino Moreno these days? He still sounds amazing, honestly. The music may have fallen off for a few albums there, but Chino definitely never has, it seems. Chosen tracks here would be Infinite Source, Locked Club, and Cut Hands. What? 2 number 5s? You heard it here first, folks. I couldn't put this album any higher simply because I haven't listened to it enough. There's been so much in my ears lately that I heard this album, it struck me, I listened to it for about a week, and then, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just kind of left my ears. Not because it's bad whatsoever, but this was one of the most anticipated releases of the year when it comes to metal fans, when it comes to the metal underground realm. Via Nova was something that was much ballyhooed, and so much so that this is a band that went from like almost obscurity to nearly 400,000 monthly listeners on like Spotify and streaming sites. Critics even like this album, which is wild considering how metal it is, because most critics don't like metal. Fearless, exciting, and downright insane at times, Via Nova is carving out a unique space in what's becoming a very crowded and diverse field that is metal in 2026. And like, when I say like downright insane, this is one of those bands that you'd expect they'd create a whole new wacky subgenre for because they can't explain what it is. So they just want to slap a label on it rather than go through, 2 to 3 sentences to explain what they are. Don't even get me started on subgenres. I've already touched upon that up above. So with all of that being said, if you're looking for like a polished, glossy metalcore type album, which is the du jour of the mid-2020s, this is not for you. Synths and keys mixed with high-pitched screams, low-pitched gutturals, samples, frequent starts and stops, genty guitars, melodic riffs, and lush melodies, all packaged in 11 3 to 5 minute songs. The most interesting note I can make on this album, though, will be with all that craziness and musical insanity, it's just a hella fun record. I mean, you can just get down to all these songs. All told, this release is something you experience. You don't just listen to this record. You're going to move around. You're going to bounce. You're going to sing. Even if you don't know the words. There's parts where there's big background, big gang vocal type situations, and you're going to get into it because that's what I found myself doing. So I can only imagine, as a music fan, you'd do the same thing. The tracks I returned to the most on this one were Mas Rapido, Yaya, and Wheel of Fortune. I'm just going to be straight with you that the top 4 albums on this list, it was a battle royale. It was a fist fight, teeth were missing, blackened eyes, bloody faces, arms broken, limbs dangling. This was a brawl. This was a brawl on a level of The Boys. Okay, that's what this was, because these last 4 albums were so good that holy cow, like it was hard for me to hash it out. So I don't know. It's almost like 1A, B, C, and D, but we're gonna call this number 4. What else can I possibly say about Coheed and Cambria that I haven't said already? No one in rock or metal today does melodies better than Claudio Sanchez. G fucking G, okay? There's no argument to be made at this point. Vaxis 3 is no different. One banger after another, with Progressive Majesty bringing up the rear. Coheed is forging a Rush-like trail from a career standpoint and a fan-building perspective. I know they will never achieve that legendary status where they'll be playing arenas and stuff in the eyes of the public, because that's just not the world we live in today. So it's not their fault, not a criticism of theirs. The fact is, there haven't been any legendary status rock bands since what, like the Foo Fighters? Legendary bands in this millennium are few and far between.
This can't be all that we wanted for us in the here and right now.
Like I said before, this isn't a knock on Coheed whatsoever. In fact, I see it as a testament to what they've built and continue to add to. The slow build of Coheed and Cambria's fan base will prove to show the world that the children of the fence are here for the long haul, and a lot like Rush, we are hopelessly devoted to this band. Coheed fans are amongst the best I've ever seen, and that's all due to the music that they continue to create and the lore that they continue to build. If you want my full unvarnished opinion on this album, a lot like the Styx record from before, you can go to my Patreon page, Redbeard Videos, or to see the full thing. Listen to the whole album with me, like every note from start to finish, and all of my opinions and all of my takes as we go along. There's even a part where I got quite emotional in the middle of this record. So I highly recommend going over to my Patreon, $3 a month. Just check it out. Or you can check the highlights out right here on this channel. My fave tracks on this record are so hard to nail down. Honestly, I like almost every song. But Play the Poet, Searching for Tomorrow, and Someone Who Can are the ones that I've spun relentlessly for the entirety of the time this album's been out. This album came completely out of nowhere and late in the year for me. I wasn't expecting to not only have it come out, but to love it as much as I do. Astronoid is such a unique sounding band without being ostracizing. The best way I could describe them would be very melodic pop metal with sympathetic sounding vocals, a dense synth wall of sound that would make Devin Townsend go, what? And, of course, blast beats. Metal. You know. Labeled as everything from shoegaze to black metal, Astronoid was relatively underground for the most part of their career until making a lot of noise in 2025 when they were asked to tour with Blink-182 over the summer. Coming off that success came Stargod. This effort was clearly Astronoid growing as songwriters and maybe trying to capitalize on the amount of new eyes and ears that were put on them since the Blink-182 tour. It's by far their most commercial effort to date without question. Oh, and don't worry though, The blast beats and the progginess and the wall of sound are all still very much present, but they're just a little more subdued on this release, but the songs are simply just better. If Astronoid's last release, Radiant Bloom, was considered a return to their form after their self-titled second album kind of explored more accessible sounds and strayed away from the blast beat heavy debut, then Star God feels like the final meshing of all the elements that is Astronoid. Regardless of all that, I highly recommend having a drink or an edible or meditating or whatever it is you do to chill the fuck out and drift away for a bit. Popping this album on some quality headphones or some banging system with some killer speakers and just drift away with the atmospheric tones coming from this record. It's simply beautiful music, and there's no better way to describe it. Standout tracks are all of them. Every single song is beautiful to my ears. This album was by far my very favorite album of the year 2025, until it wasn't. Now, it wasn't the album's fault. It didn't do anything wrong. It was just doing what it does, existing and being amazing. What the album does do very well is deliver 57 minutes and 13 seconds of what the fuck put to music. Insane musical passages and brutal breakdown that sometimes double down on each other long enough to make you think you might be having a manic episode, only to relieve that mania with catchy, earwormy hooks that will stick with you all goddamn day. Tracks like Lemon and Distracted by the Mona Lisa provide melodic respites from the audible madness of tunes like Tears on My Lambo Leather, Idiot Temptation Force, and The Demon of Unreality Limping Like a Dog. That is a mouthful. And they all go very hard on the madness. Add in some irreverent lyrics about the industry they are serving that will make you think if you read them, because hearing them can prove to be difficult sometimes to the untrained ear. About what? I don't really know, because they are outlandish at times. It is my contention that this album will stand as a beacon to modern metal for many years to come. People will point back at this one the same way they point back at Sixth albums and Cynic albums and other innovative but deeply underground metal records.
Tell me to take my place. I wish a motherfucker would. Easy money, take the bet. See if a motherfucker could.
The only difference might be that I believe the Callous Daoboys have a small chance to make some noise on a commercial level. It's a long shot because there is a lot of madness in here, but they have something. I can't really know what it is. It's like one of those things. That guy has it. I don't know what it is, but they have it. My fave tracks are, again, there's a banger at every spot, but I will drop this little tidbit for you if you're a deep-rooted underground metal and avant-garde metal fan. Look for the Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum reference in the final track, Country Song in Reverse. Also, be sure to check out my interview with their guitarist, Daniel Hodgson, right here on the channel in future weeks. And that brings us to our number one, our very favorite album of 2025. But before that, there are some honorable mentions worth talking about. Talk amongst yourselves.
A romancer.
My excuse is to define the truth. In the battle between me and you,
We can see climb the highest mountain
All right, the album that knocked the Callous Cowboys off their perch, when I spoke with Daniel Hodgson, totally understood. The Blue Nowhere might be not only the best album of 2025, but it might be one of the best albums I've heard in a decade. Just when I think that Between the Buried and Me might have lost their special sauce after what Colors 2 was slightly a disappointing record to me. It wasn't bad by any stretch, but it was just like, I don't know, coming off of Automata, which was one of my favorite albums, there was 2 albums, but my favorite 2 albums of those years, and then, I don't know, Colors 2 just didn't hit me right. It just seemed like it was an album that didn't need to be made. It kind of seemed like more of the same for Between the Buried and Me, which is not a bad thing. Again, as I said with Spirit Box up above, if you're the best at what you do, you might as well just do the same thing sometimes, right? Because sometimes if it ain't broken, you don't fix it. In this case, though, I don't know, Colors 2 was a very long album, and I find myself getting about halfway through it and going, okay, I want to hear more BT Bam, but not this. The Blue Nowhere, I listened from cover to cover over and over and over and over and so many times. I don't think I've ever listened to an album that frequently for that long a time as I did with this one. It's mind-numbingly good. They have found a way to add a new wrinkle to their sound, which is accessibility. Imagine that. All these years, 20 plus years later, and here they are, just doing something different. The title track, The Blue Nowhere, the last 2 songs on the album actually, are probably and possibly amongst the most beautiful music I've heard in a long time, and by far the most accessible of their career.
In a voice gasp to hold.
I can hear, like, if we still had legitimate, relevant rock radio in America, I bet they played The Blue Nowhere, the song, the title track, on the regular, because it was that type of song. What a tremendous performance by Tommy Rogers, who continues to grow as a vocalist. And it's worth noting that this was the first album without second guitarist Dusty Waring, who has been in the band for, I don't know, I think he was a founding member. I don't know the lore and the history of BT Bam as much as my son does, so I'd have to ask him. But he's been around for as many albums as I know, and I've seen them live dozens of times over the last 15 years, so I've seen him every time. This was the first album that he wasn't there, and I won't go into why, because I don't know. I don't want to get into the controversy. There was just an issue. That's all we're going to say. And maybe that's why the change in direction, or maybe it was just time. Maybe it was just time for BT Bam to try something different. I don't really know. You can get the answer yourself by checking out the interview that's on the channel right here. I've become a promotion whore on this particular video, but you got to do what you got to do to make it. There are no favorite tracks on this album. The entire album is just banger after banger, classic after classic. I will say that songs like God Terror and Things We Tell Ourselves in the Dark and The Blue Nowhere are not only revelatory on how good they are and how different they are when they fit in the lexicon of BT Bam's catalog, but they're just some of the best rock and metal songs I've heard in quite some time. I can't recommend this album highly enough. So check it out. It's why it's my favorite album of the year. And that's my list. What were your favorite albums of 2025? Put them down in the comments and let me know what you think of my list too, where, if you thought one album belonged higher or lower, or this album sucks or whatever, and tell me what your favorite albums are, because I like to know. I like to have these discussions. And a lot of times what I have found is, as we traverse further into the internet age and social media and access to music from all around the world, I find myself hearing people's lists and going, I've never heard that. I've never heard that. And it was as recently as 10 years ago that wasn't the case. It was very rare that someone would throw something at me and I would go, yeah, I've never heard that before. Now, I find it to be more the norm than not. Maybe that's a function of the age that I'm reaching. I'm nearly 50 years old, so I'm not really out there exploring a lot, but I still go to I don't know, 25 to 50 shows a year. And I still let music play like past the album and it goes to like the radio, you know, like Spotify and Apple Music. Like it'll go to like not a pre-made, but it'll go to like a random list that kind of runs in line with what you were listening to. And I even have stuff pop up there and I go, what is this? This sounds so cool. What is this? And it's 9 times out of 10, it's something I never heard of before. So please leave your list and tell me what your favorite albums are because you might educate me. And I love that. I don't know it all. I just pretend to know it all. And that's it. And thank you so much. And Happy New Year again. And I hope all of you have the best, most prosperous and fun and peaceful 2026 that you can have. And I hope you share it with me. And I hope you stick with me because I'm going to do a lot this year. So please stick with me. And please share and like and subscribe and leave comments and talk with me. Because I'm not an island. I want to talk to you all. So thank you so much for being here with me as I so much enjoy being here with you as always. And until next time, we will catch up with you very soon. Bye now.